Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. Here we explore the lessons learned, the obstacles overcome, and the wisdom gained by entrepreneurs who found their way to success in often unexpected ways. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Kristin Zhivago, an accomplished entrepreneur, business leader, and the owner of Zhivago Partners, a digital marketing agency dedicated to helping businesses grow through customer-centric strategies. Kristin's entrepreneurial journey began long before she founded Zhivago Partners. With decades of experience as a revenue coach and a deep understanding of how customers want to buy, she's built her business around aligning marketing strategies with buyer behavior. Kristin is also the author of the highly acclaimed book, Roadmap to Revenue: How to Sell the Way Your Customers Want to Buy, a practical guide for businesses looking to thrive by truly understanding their customers. Her agency is known for its commitment to quality, collaboration, and what she calls a jerk-free bubble. I'm going to ask her about that. A culture where trust and kindness fuel innovation and results. In this episode, Kristin shares her insights into what it takes to build a successful business, her strategies for overcoming challenges, and her philosophy of entrepreneurship grounded in empathy and resilience. So whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or someone contemplating starting a business, this conversation is packed with valuable takeaways. So let's dive into the conversation with Kristin Zhivago on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. Kristin, thanks for being
Hi
here.
there.
Thanks for being my guest today.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
Well, it's nice to have you here. Before we dive into the past and talk about your journey, let's dive into the present. Tell me about Zhivago Partners and what it is, what it does, and then we'll kind of work our way backwards.
Okay, well, we are a digital marketing agency, and I started the agency in 2017. And we'll talk about what I did before that. But I basically started the agency because as a revenue coach, I saw people who had established businesses that had a good product and good people, and they were struggling with getting the digital marketing to work. They had vendors, it didn't work out. They tried different channels, didn't work out. People are very frustrated with the digital marketing aspect, and it's changing radically all the time, but AI is really changing it now too. So our job is to help people get qualified leads, and that's what we do.
Excellent. And what inspired you to transition from a revenue coach to starting your own digital marketing agency? That you left. Well, let me ask you first. When you were a revenue coach, was that your business?
Yeah.
So you were an entrepreneur before you were an entrepreneur, at least in this one.
An entrepreneur all my life.
Okay.
I started a high-tech ad agency with my husband in, believe it or not, 1979 in Silicon Valley. And we did that for about 12 years. And the Mac came on the scene. And I looked at my husband, who was our graphic designer and was also an engineer and an inventor. And I said, you know what, you might as well retire. I'm going to go and figure out how to make it easier for people to do this in-house. Because I could see what was happening with agencies. They were going to lose a whole lot of business. So I reinvented myself. My husband retired and ended up making things for the rest of his life. That's what he did, loved to do. Boats and speakers and all sorts of things. Anyway, for the first, 3 years or so, I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to do every day, which was a far cry from my absolutely loaded 14 hours a day job running the agency. And then in about 2014, I did this revenue coach work. I did marketing and sales department turnarounds for companies of all sizes, all the way up to IBM, Dow Jones, and so on. And basically helped hundreds of CEOs and interviewed thousands of customers and found out how to find out why people buy from a particular company and how they buy, so we can reverse engineer the successful buying process, and then and create new sales and quantity. And then around 2014, I had a client and we started an agency together. We did pretty well, but our operating philosophies were a little differently. So I left in 2017 and started this agency.
Excellent. What were some of your most significant challenges that you faced, either in Zhivago Partners or in your experience as a revenue coach and other things that you've played in over the years? What types of challenges did you face, and how did you overcome some of those? Limit it to 300 or 400 challenges.
Well, it's kind of interesting. One of the benefits of doing departmental turnarounds is for other companies is you really get a chance to test and try out different things and learn lessons. And by the time I started this company, I had very strong feelings about what makes for good management. I would say to any entrepreneur, if you underestimate the challenge of cash flow, it's going to be a real problem for you, because you really, I think that's the biggest difficulty for everyone, when you've got a business and the money's coming in, but it's in 1 week it doesn't come in as fast as it should for you to do your payroll, and people don't talk about it very much, but I think it's one of the biggest problems in all businesses.
Yeah, I know.
So
In the real estate world, they say the three most important things in real estate is location, location, location. I think in the business world, the three most important things, at least in the early days, is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Absolutely. You mentioned you were a revenue coach. In my early days of building my business, which I started 33 years ago, it was all about cash flow. I mean, profit, I didn't even think about profit. It was never in the front of my mind, because that's tomorrow's problem. I needed cash flow, right? I needed to cover payroll. I needed to pay rent. I needed to buy parts. And so it was all about cash flow. So I was really good at bringing in revenue. I'm not a revenue coach, but I know how to bring in revenue. The problem was it wasn't profitable revenue, but it was enough to cover the needs for that week. And it was very short-term thinking. And, then, of course, you do that for a few months, and then all of a sudden the profit part catches up to you, right? Back when you were a revenue coach, and I'm sure part of you, that's still in you, I would assume. That's one advantage in starting a second business after being a revenue coach. You know that part of it. How do you differentiate, or how did you advise your clients at the time to differentiate between, productive revenue beyond just covering immediate needs, to make it sustainable and profitable?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Even this agency, when I first started it, I was it's really easy to have sort of a salesperson's mentality where you're empathetic to the client, and you think sort of in terms of what you would allow yourself to spend, or how much you think something should cost. But you really need to figure in the profit margin, and there are formulas in a lot of businesses. We ended up using a formula that came up with good, competitive, fair prices, but they were higher than what I just would empathetically charge a client.
Right.
And we've been using that ever since, and that's been good. You also, I always laugh about entrepreneurs drooling over spreadsheets when they start their company, and thinking about 4 in the morning and thinking about how much money they're going to make. But they usually underestimate how much they're going to need by about 2/3.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that kind of looking at what if and checking your spreadsheet and saying, okay, I think this is how much my business is going to cost me, then you have to multiply it. You have to add another 2/3, because there's the unexpected, There are clients who can leave you and not pay. I try to avoid that, but by avoiding working with jerks, so I typically don't have cash problems
Hence
that way.
your your jerk-free bubble that I talked
Yes,
about in the intro. That's an
that's
amazing
right.
term. You
Yeah.
know, on that subject, one lesson I've learned, and I'm curious if you've experienced this as well. It used to be any customer was a potential customer. Anyone willing to buy our product at almost any price. That was a customer. And eventually we realized the futility of that. So we came to the realization that we choose our customers just as much as they choose us. And, you know, it needs to be a match. And when we stopped concentrating on price, when we stopped leading with price, we'll beat any. There's a famous guy here in California, maybe he's national, I'm not sure, that sells mattresses. And his slogan is, I'll beat any advertised price or your mattress is free, you know, and it's obnoxious. But that was us. And when we switched to a value-led proposition rather than a price-led proposition, we started attracting different types of customers. If we're going to lose on price, we're going to just lose on price now. You know, I'm not going to lose money on an order. That's not fair to all my other customers because it puts my company in jeopardy to be able to service them, and you know they've invested with us. So once we've left the price model out and we went to value-based pricing and fair, competitive, but based on value and based on being able to stay in business and sustain our company and manage growth, we started attracting customers who did not lead with price. Price is obviously important, but they didn't lead with price. And they also paid better. They were partnering with us. It was less transactional and more partnership, more collaborative than it was in the past. And it didn't make sense thinking about it looking forward, like, we need more business, so let's raise our prices. That is counterintuitive, but it actually, in our case, it worked. I'm wondering if you've seen similar experiences amongst your clients or maybe your business.
Yeah, it also depends on the type of business. And
True.
you obviously have to look at that carefully. I think one of the big problems with business advice in general is that it's often generic, like, if you do this, you'll be successful.
Right. 10 trips
And
to 10 tricks to success. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Order now and we'll
Um,
send you 12.
yeah. Um, if you're running a service business, everything that you just said is correct. You can price yourself out of work, but it also depends on the size of the company, or the size of their company and how much they're willing to pay. So a small business won't be able to pay as much as a larger business. We tend to be sensitive to that. I've had my fill of working with startups because I was in Silicon Valley for so long. And they really do have cash flow problems. And they also have more serious political issues because nobody can say, oh, that's working and so we're going to keep that up. You have more people that come in who are new and are saying, oh, that's not what we did at our last company. We did it this way. And so that's how we should do it. And that's bad advice because this is why I always revert back to interviewing people who have already bought from you, which is hard if you're a startup, by the way. You have to find people who might
Yeah.
buy from you. But the beauty of the method that we use for this research is that you can talk to 5 to 7 people of a given type. That's all. And get bankable insights. So you don't have to have a lot of customers to be able to interview the people who've already bought from you. And then you can, reverse engineer a successful sale and create new sales. So you're basically saying this is what they want. We're going to figure out how to give it to them, and then you do. How you price, it should be based on the big promises they want you to keep. And if you can provide proof that you will keep those promises, first you have to know what the promises are that they want you to keep, which everybody guesses about and everybody gets wrong. which is why marketing is like 70% ineffective or more. And it's really sad. The longest I've been in marketing, I keep thinking, boy, if they just focused on what customers really want, not what they guess they want, then they're going to have better results. People are going to come to their site. This is what happens to our clients. And they say, that's us. That's what we want. And okay, now we're willing to pay extra for this because we've had so much trouble getting it somewhere else.
Since you brought up marketing, let me switch gears a little bit. Marketing has changed over the years, obviously. When I started my company, and of course, when you first started yours in the late 70s, there was no internet. So there was really just a handful of advertising mediums that we could advertise on: magazines, trade magazines or consumer magazines, trade shows, and direct mail campaigns, and things like that. It was basically a physical form of advertising, and the industry, pretty much every industry, responded positively to that because there was no other choice. And then, of course, there's radio and television and all that. But for us mere mortals, it was mostly print advertising. And the industry responded to it. They expected it because it was the only source of information that they would get on a periodic basis or a trade show annually or whatever. The internet changed all that radically. And where you and I have, no doubt we have spam filters within our email platform, younger people than us, they grew up in the digital age. They didn't grow up in the print age. And I think they have spam filters in their head that they don't look at advertising the way we did. And they tend to seek information and learn and then reach out to whoever they want to reach out to. Gone are the days, at least in my industry, where, in the early days, we had manufacturers reps that were under contract in regions of the country and of the world that would sell our equipment. And I would go out and do what we call windshield time with them. We'd sit in the car for 3 days and make 8 or 9 stops a day and walk into the receptionist, into the lobby, give a box of See's candy to the receptionist and walk down the hallway, walking into the offices, saying hi to Bob and Sally and Ted and Alice and Hector and all that. And then have our meeting, ask about the kids, ask about how the farm's doing or whatever, and then go on to the next place. Leave a line card or two and then go on to the next place. Today, that is absolutely done. Most businesses, at least in our world, the electronics world, you need a key card to even get in the lobby. There is no public access to the lobby. It's by appointment. You have to get buzzed in. And if they want to meet with you, you don't get past the lobby. They usually the larger companies have a small conference area off to the side of the lobby. You don't get into the business. And most of the time, you can't even get someone on the phone to make an appointment to see them. They're locked down. And a lot has to do with fewer people doing more things and productivity and security and all of that. But the way we advertise today is way different than the way you and I would advertise back in the day. Has that experience landed on you? And what changes have you made in your marketing strategies that you advise clients from earlier days to today?
I've completely abandoned what was there and started the agency as a digital agency. So the whole idea of trade journals and magazine advertising, radio advertising, all of those things, they're still there, but they're not anywhere near a part of the buying process. The real buying process is people either hear about something somewhere or they actively search. It's all digital now. And AI is the new changing all of that once again. So the search engine, it was started with the web in 94, but Google coming along and making it easy for you to find what you're looking for, that changed everything. So we spent a lot of time on search engine optimization and content, and we have strategies for getting content on top that's basically very helpful content. There's no substitute for that even now with AI. But AI has truly it's just sweeping through all industries. Everything has changed. And we are making sure we're on the tip of that spear. I've been doing that all my life. I mean, my whole career has been in tech. And we tend to specialize in tech. We did a lot of other types of companies for a while, but I get bored selling, makeup and food and things like that. I really enjoy understanding complex technical tools and the businesses that buy them and how they use them. And I've just been doing that all my life. So that's what excites us and gets us up. And now we are starting to partner with a company that's created a marketing platform. We went through several phases with AI. First, everybody and their uncle was just trying it out, asking questions of ChatGPT or whatever your favorite um, Perplexity AI or whatever your favorite search engine or AI tool is. And then I've been just drinking from a fire hose for a while, just making sure that I understood how AI works. And honestly, I think even the people who have created the LLMs, the language machines, learning machines, don't actually know how they learn. I think that's a bit of a problem for society as a whole because we're creating these massively intelligent machines and we don't know how they work. Um, so I'm partnering with a company that's created a platform for marketing, and I've known this company for a long time. It's a research company, and I really respect the owner, and I think they've done a marvelous job creating this marketing machine where you can basically do whatever you need through the AI environment, uh, and just shifting us and our clients to take full advantage and leverage these new tools. The second phase was first everybody's trying it. The second phase was some entrepreneurial types creating, they sort of cobbled together several types of AI tools and then created a little mini platform to do a very specific job. And we worked with some of those companies for a little while and saw what they did, and it was fine. But we needed something more organic, not organic, but harmonized, where everything we were doing was linked to everything else. And you can set up, it's amazing. You can set up plans now in, 5 minutes. It's a very different world, very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
And
I
so
use
the value proposition, if I can just finish that up,
Yeah,
is
sorry.
changing. The people think that AI does a good job of writing copy. I think the jury's still out on that, but you can get it really darn close if, and only if you understand your customers and why they buy and how they buy, and you don't guess. And what worries me about AI is we're going to automate bad marketing and do it faster and more widely and
Yeah.
still be off target. That's not good.
Yeah, that's true. I use AI a lot. I have another podcast called Reliability Matters where I interview subject matter experts within the electronic manufacturing space on the subject of reliability. And they are experts in topics that I am not an expert in. So I use AI to help bring me up to speed so that I can ask intelligent, relevant questions. And it helps me a lot. And I use it regularly for that. I don't have it write copy for me. I also write a lot of technical articles and monthly columns and industry trades. And it's perfectly capable of writing an entire column for me if I give it all the right prompts. But I don't know, there's something, I don't want it, I want it to be me. I don't want it to be it. But I will ask it a lot of questions. And I will also go back and ask it to source some of it. And some of it will. So, one of the latest additions to ChatGPT 4.0 is it will add citations in a little box next to certain things so that you can go back and fact check it. And one of the things I've noticed is if I read something, a response in AI that I know about, that I'm familiar with, I'll realize that's not correct. And I will challenge it and give it another citation, and it will come back and said, yes, this was an error. Here is the correct answer. Thanks for letting me know. And I assume it won't make that mistake again. It will learn from that. But it's not perfect, but it's really good. It's really helpful. I think it's a tool, not a crutch, but a tool if it's used properly. But it's all about the prompts. You kind of have to know what you're doing to get it to really open up and provide accurate information. So
and it depends on the source too. I mean, I've ended up relying more on Perplexity.ai than I do ChatGPT for that kind of research, because they always do source this. They cite the sources.
Yeah.
So it's more reliable that way. I've been testing it ever since it started really being a thing. Because in addition to being a subject matter expert in terms of growing your company, I'm also an ocean sailor. Been sailing for, 45 years now, something like that. Terrible. And my husband and I had a 48-foot catamaran built in South Africa and then sailed it home. That was one of our big
Wow.
adventures.
That
Yeah,
is an
that was,
adventure. Wow.
yeah, it
That's
was
impressive.
2 months at sea. Just the two of us.
Did you stop for
We made one stop in a
fuel for
little.
your generator or whatever?
No, we managed. We were sailing most of the way, but
Wow.
we still had fuel left over when we got to Newport, Rhode Island. We stopped in one tiny little island off of Africa called Saint Helena, and this is where they imprisoned Napoleon at the end
Right.
of his
Yeah.
reign.
His little private island. Yeah.
Yeah,
In
and
exile.
well, I don't think he thought of it as private island because he was in jail, but
It was his exiled. Yeah. But he got to bring his staff with him and all that. So,
no, I think he was in jail, and the jail is like,
oh.
350 steps up, the side of a cliff. It's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
okay. All right.
Anyway, so,
The cost of being a
I'm
dictator.
I'm a subject matter expert on sailing, so I asked it, "How do you sail upwind?" Just to see what it would say, and I've done that, I don't know, 4 or 5 times now over the course of several months, and it gets a little better each time, but every single time in the list of instructions, there's one thing that it
All
tells
right.
you to do that is absolutely incorrect, and if you did it, you'd end up on the rocks. It's I mean, if you followed the instructions, you would end up on the rock. So that's kind of my take right now. I do think it's getting better. I think it's learning very fast, and I think we have to be aware of, the genie's out of the bottle. AI is gonna just continue to grow.
Yeah.
People are gonna be competing like crazy. The data centers are now turning to nuclear power to
Right.
try to
Well,
get all this.
they're reactivating part of 3 Mile Island just for
Yes, that's
one data
right.
center. Just was
Microsoft.
it Google's data center or
No, it's Microsoft.
Microsoft's data center? Yeah, that's crazy to think about. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm a pilot. You are a sailor. I love boating too, but to be candid, I like engines in my boat. I don't have the patience to do sailing. Although I would love to be a guest, a passenger on a sailboat. That is just amazingly quiet and beautiful. Nature's moving you. I just love the whole concept, but I just don't have the patience for it. So I'm going to ask you. I'll give you some business advice that I took from my pilot days. Things that I learned when I learned to fly that are applicable to business. Is there anything in your sailing world? And just sailing against the wind is probably a good thing. But what did you learn in your sailing world that is applicable to business?
Oh golly, there's so much. One of the things is preparation. There's no substitute for preparation and deep thought. So when we left South Africa, I had to provision the boat for 2 months at sea. And I had a massive spreadsheet. I like spreadsheets. And, I'd been feeding myself and my husband for many years, and, I knew what we ate, how much we ate, so I figured it out. I was lucky. They don't think very highly in South Africa, they don't think highly of meat that has no bones. So you could get a filet, what did they call it? It was a filet mignon, I can't even I'm not saying that right, but anyway, this roast kind of thing. It was about this long and this big around, and it fit just in our freezer. We had this freezer that we had. So I could buy, and they were cheap. I mean, it was shockingly cheap. My husband was a massive and beef eater. I mean, that was basically what he didn't like fish and was allergic to chicken, so we ate a lot of beef. Um, so the preparation, and we never did have to dip into the cans of hearty soup, whatever it was, Campbell's
No,
Hearty
no
Man soup.
rations. Yeah.
Yeah, we ate vegetables and meat all the way across, and it was, that taught me a lot. I think the main thing is that, uh, I don't wanna swear here, I swore off swearing a long time ago, but, stuff happens,
Stuff
okay?
happens. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and stuff did happen. People say, "Oh, did you run into any storms?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, 8,000 miles at sea, yes, we ran into some storms." Um, and we had some real emergencies a few times that were very scary and could have resulted in us somersaulting. We were in a catamaran, and if a sail falls down in front, then you can end up somersaulting and being upside down in the middle of the Atlantic. Um, so I think that's the main thing, is that all of this business and sailing and all of these things where there are consequences of your actions means that you need to be rational, and you need to put your own ego aside and just focus on what's important and stick to your guns. Just like my no jerk policy. I mean, if we end up hiring someone who turns out to be a jerk, they're gone really fast, because I don't want it poisons the well and
Yeah,
all the people who are good people, and I define a jerk as somebody who makes life harder on everybody else. Nice people don't do that. Nice people, kind people try to make things easier on everyone else. And
agreed.
fortunately, the world is made up mostly of nice people, but you really do have to avoid the people that will put, a spanner in the works, as they say in England, just
Wrench in the
messing
works.
things up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, what are some of the biggest challenges your clients see today in their businesses? Is there a common theme, or is it really dependent on the type of business?
I think that one of the things one has to do when one's using digital marketing is that you have to separate the buyer's I call it the buyer's mindset when they set out to buy, which is more important than personas or anything else. And the mindset of the buyer consists of their desires, their concerns, and their questions. So when they come to your site, they should know immediately that you do understand what they want. That's their desires, what they're looking for, and that you understand and empathize with their concerns, and that you've considered them and addressed them. And then once you've jumped through those two hoops, then you get to them asking very specific questions. And if you do that, if you do those three things on your homepage right off the bat, you're going to be, I don't know, 50% or 70% ahead of your competitors who aren't doing that. When you're buying, we all know that that's what we're thinking. And we forget when we put on our seller's hats and we start worrying about revenue and trying to sell, we kind of forget that, and we push the product and we push, I think you were telling me in our first meeting that your marketing consultant said, stop selling products. And you were like, excuse me? What do you mean? but she really was right that you need to understand what they want and then start addressing it with helpful content and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that's
the idea is to be at least our way of doing it. It probably doesn't work for everybody, but for us it did. Is to become an authority and provide value, authority-based value, or be considered an authority. We cannot declare ourselves an authority. We have to earn that. And then you become a word which I hate because of the Kardashians, but an influencer, right? You become an influencer, and
yeah.
and then you educate the person that works for your customer or your prospect customer, and then they become an authority when they go to their boss and ask for approval to buy some capital equipment. So we
Yeah,
have to.
that's exactly right.
It's
Okay,
not
so
like we don't talk to the bean counters. They don't understand. The bean counters, their job is to approve the funds based on, a requisition, based on a proposal, based on an ROI, based on all these different things. But it starts with need. And so we have to educate our customer so they can educate their management so that they can solve the problem. And
exactly right.
talking
So
about our
so
products doesn't do it.
no, that's right. Now they still need the information. You have to answer all their questions.
Absolutely, but it doesn't start there. It
Right.
starts with the problem and the best practice solutions. And then once they understand, they draw the line, it's their discovery, then and only then does our specifications and all of that make any sense. Otherwise,
Yes,
we're just speaking Greeks to speaking Greek to Italians. It won't make any sense.
yeah, and they won't buy into it until they've
Right.
understood that and so you're right about that. The second challenge and is that they typically approach digital marketing by going to channels first. So I consider a channel anywhere your message gets out. In the old days, it was trade publications and all that. Now it's completely changed. It's search engines, it's social media. And selling on social media is different for B2B companies than B2C companies, very much. I can go into more detail on that, but let's just stick with the channel. So there's a there's email marketing, um, and how AI is going to change all of this is going to be very interesting to me. I'm watching that very carefully. Um, the new AI bit that Google puts at the top of its search engine results has been interesting. So they start with a channel. They ignore the customer needs and desires and concerns and questions. They skip that part. The big problem, they skip that part, and then they just say, "Okay, what are the channels?" Like, they build a persona with AI or something, and they say, "Oh, the places they would go would be, this is a business customer, so they'd be at LinkedIn, and if it's another customer, they go to X or Facebook or whatever." And then because they haven't done that customer research where they're figuring out why people buy and how they buy, then they put what is basically a broken message on a channel, and the channel might not even be the place where customers would look for that sort of thing. So when I interview customers, and by the way, I teach how to do this in my book. Chapter 3 is all the secrets, how you get this information out of your current customers.
And say the name of the book again.
It's Roadmap to Revenue, how to sell the way your customers wanna buy.
Available on
And I also
Amazon.
touch hmm? Yeah,
Available
it's
on
only on
Amazon.
Amazon. I
Yeah.
just put it on Amazon, and
Yeah.
that was, but one of the things I cover in the book too is the 4 types of products and services in the world based on the amount of scrutiny that the person applies to the purchase. So there's light scrutiny where they see it, they buy it, it's super cheap, nobody else is involved. Medium scrutiny is like clothing and the B2C side and small software programs and the B2B side. Um, where they have several questions, they have more questions. There might be somebody else involved, but probably not. Um, and then heavy scrutiny is there's a salesperson, there's a contract, there's other people involved. And I map all these out in the book. The highest scrutiny is intense scrutiny, where you're buying a house or a car, or you're getting an airplane made by an airplane manufacturer or something. But you get married. It's usually a service type of thing where there's a long-term contract or something. So if you understand those, and I map out what the questions are people have when they're buying, and the types of things you need to do to help them make that buying decision. Your job is not to sell. Your job is to make it easy for them to buy. That's your job. That's where revenue comes from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think well, I've had a lot of cars over the years that I've, been able to own a car. And I'm just kind of a motorhead at heart. And I enjoy the process of buying cars. Most people hate it. I enjoy it. It's the closest thing to a Hunger Games reality show that I can ever get. But I've never been sold a car. I buy a car, and I'm sure the salesman believes they sold me a car. They did not. There's nothing that salesman could say that would make me want to buy a car I otherwise would not want to buy. There's plenty of things that salesperson could say that would make me not want to buy from that person. That's happened. I've walked out of more dealerships without a car than with a car. But yeah, I'm not being sold. They're there to perform a transaction if I'm willing. But I already have an idea when I go in, what I want. And that's not anything to do with the person that says, "Can I help you today? What can we do to get you in this car today? Stop talking."
Yeah, I know. Salespeople are obsolete, and I'm a recovering salesperson. So
yeah, we all are. Yeah.
I feel sad about that. But the truth is, people already, by the time they come to you in these heavy scrutiny purchases, when they have to talk to a salesperson, by the time they come to you, just like you said, they're already 80% down their road, and they just have a few questions, and they just want you to answer them honestly. Please be honest, and
Yeah.
no games. Just answer the question. One of our clients got rid of their salespeople, hired customer service people, and all they do is help the customer buy. And maybe not even buy from them, but usually they do because the person is so helpful. They're super helpful people, and they help the customer buy, and that's what we all really want. Nobody likes being sold to. Nobody.
No, we're not stupid. Consumers today, I don't think in our generation, I don't think we would ever have been considered stupid. But the newer generation are infinitely more informed than we were, because we didn't have the technology to inform us in real time, in seconds. We didn't have AI, we didn't have internet, we didn't have all that. We had, ads that we read and largely believed were true, and then we had to vet them.
We still had word of mouth, though.
We had word of
still had
mouth, we
people
had
we could talk
referrals,
to.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, all that, which we have today too. But even today's word of mouth is much faster, and
And
look at
more
Yelp,
digital. Yeah.
and way
Yeah.
more digital,
Yeah.
for better or for worse, for both really. So when you were building either your first business or your second business or your 10th business, however many you've had, since you were kind of a born entrepreneur, what strategies have been most effective in scaling your business? And I don't mean growing your business, because I believe there's a big difference between growth and scaling. Scaling is growth. Growth without scaling is trouble, right? Because not everything rises at the same time. So what are some of the best strategy advice tips that you can give on how to properly scale, when to properly scale, how much to scale, how much is too much? I know that's a very generic question and it has a lot of
No, I have
nuances
an
to
answer
it, but
for you.
yeah,
When you look at the richest guy in the world, or one of them, I don't know, sometimes he trades positions with other people, but Jeff Bezos is definitely way up there. What he did at the very beginning, when he first came out, I thought to myself, wow, this is somebody who's building a business on an infrastructure, not a product. He didn't care what product it was, and now he sells everything. But it was all based on an infrastructure, and everything they do is designed to make it easier for customers to buy. They set the standard for that. Every which way you can look at it. It's like they sit down in a room and they go, okay, what else can we do to make it easy for them to buy? Other people have bought this, and here's what you looked at, and here's a way to answer customer questions. Somebody else who bought it can tell you how big that thing really is inside or whatever. So they are the standard on making it easy for customers to buy. I'm surprised more people haven't imitated them. So don't look at your business in terms of what you think is like the traditional model. In my case, I organized the agency so I could scale. And I started with a core infrastructure team. And those are the people that help me run the business. And so they don't necessarily have the usual titles, but they are the core team. They help me run the business. Then I have a core campaign team that specializes in particular channels like social or SEO or whatever, online advertising. And then beyond that team, I have other specialists who are designers, developers, writers, that kind of thing. And those people can be added easily. It's just as you bring in new clients, we have systems for bringing them on board and getting them on in the systems that we use. And all of this is supported by automation. Good, solid products by the way, I'm writing a new book, and one of the things I talk about is logistics. So the name of the book is Love, Leverage, and Logistics: How You and Your Companies can Change the World. And it's basically that there's so many businesses out there that have 9 or fewer employees. It's like 80 to 90% of all the businesses in the world. And we all have the ability to create these jerk-free bubbles where, you're treating your customers right, you're treating your employees right, you're taking care of everybody. That's what love really is. And then you're leveraging all that goodness to get more business. And then you're making sure that the systems that you have are making it easy for everybody to do their job, including the buyers. So it's easy for them to do their buying process. Everybody can just do the job, love what they're doing, everything's fine. This all works. So when you structure the business, the first person I hired was a chief infrastructure officer, where I was going to because I knew I was going to run the whole business on the cloud, and I needed apps. I needed apps that were going to be really easy to use and make good decisions about them. So I had somebody who helped me evaluate the technology. That was the number one thing I did. And then I built the company on that. So you have to look at your company differently than the traditional model that's just been so common all through the years. Digital has changed everything. You've got to change the way you're looking at it.
It's amazing how fast time goes when we're doing these interviews. It seems like 10 minutes, but it's almost an hour. So let me I have a few more questions. Let's kind of do a speed round on these questions and see if we can get them in there. How do you balance staying true to your core values while adapting to evolving demands of a digital marketing landscape? Obviously you have some values there. How do you stay true to that when everything else around you is changing?
Oh, listen, I part of it is ethics, morals. It's either good or it's bad. There's no vacuum in this spiritual, so-called spiritual world. I mean, you're either helping people or hurting them. And the absolute rule I follow in my life is I always want to be helping 100% of the time. So the ego goes out the door. That's it. You're just stuck on that one thing, which is I'm going to help people, period. So that's just a moral compass. And if something I want might hurt somebody else, I just don't do it. I just don't do it. And my whole staff knows that that's how we operate. And if they have to make a decision without my immediate assistance, they know exactly where I would stand on it because of that.
I think it was Yahoo. I believe part of their company mantra is, or at least used to be, do no harm.
Do
And
no evil.
do
Yeah.
no evil. Yes. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Do no evil. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They broken it a little bit, by the way.
They've done that. It was a novel thought,
Good
and I'm sure they
concept.
meant it at the
Yeah.
time. I'm sure it was more than just a
Well, yeah,
marketing
I
pitch.
agree. Yeah.
But times have changed. How do you stay resilient in the face of challenges and obstacles and business near-death experiences, if that's ever happened to you? How do you find the resilience and the persistence to keep going? Where does that come from?
A couple places. First, I know what I've been put on earth to do, and I'm doing it, and I love it. So there's that kind of natural passion and excitement. The hardest thing for me in my life was my husband dying. Um, we were together 45 years. We were still in love on the last day, and he beat fatal cancer back in 2006, and then that's what led to us getting the boat made and going through, 8,000 miles of ocean because that was his thing on the bucket list. And he knew I wasn't ever going to retire, so he just said, "Come on, we're going to do this." But then he got a different kind of cancer later, and it really was fatal. It was a very hard time to go through that and keep my spirits up because he and I just became one person.
Hmm.
We learned how to love each other in a way that was so peaceful. It was just like heaven on earth for the last 10 years or so because we learned how to love each other. So that was hard to get past that. That was 3 years ago. Um, as long as I'm helping, as long as I'm using my experience and knowledge and keep learning and helping people with that, I'm totally energized. I don't need any additional, and if I get really messed up, I just put my head down and listen to God. And that gets me. I sooner or later I get an
Reboot.
answer and I'm like, "Okay, I got it. Fine. Thank you very much."
Yeah. I'll see you next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good. And on the subject of your husband, you mentioned that he liked to make things, and one of the things he liked to make were speakers. And I
Mm,
think this shot has them right. They look like chair backs from here, but they're not. They are speakers in the form of fine furniture. Those are amazing. He was quite the woodworker. Was it mostly
yeah.
wood projects that he
Yeah.
concentrated on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mostly. Yeah. He made
Oh,
boats and speakers and all kinds of things, and everything he did, he had a little tool, a special tool that he made to
of
do
course.
that
Of
particular thing.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question, Kristin. Before you started your entrepreneurial journeys, how did you define success, and how do you define it today?
Well, when you're younger, you're just so ambitious, and at least I was. I really wanted to, in a way, I wanted to prove to myself that I could be the best at something and really succeed at it and know that I had done that. But I always wanted to be a teacher. I had a degree in music, which is totally useless, and was in show business for a long time. Uh, I realized that I really did get the most excitement out of helping other people realize their dreams. And once you know what you're really here to do, and that's my job, um, then as you get older, you get less ambitious about it and more resolved, where you're just dedicated to this. You don't even have to worry about the other people and who you're competing against. You're really only competing against yourself every day.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom there. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for being my guest and sharing all your sage advice and your experiences. And for my audience who wants to find out more information on the book and Kristin's company, Zhivago Partners, look at the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, right down here, just click Show More, and you can get that information there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, then you can go to your podcast app and look at the show notes there, and Kristin's information will be there. Kristin Zhivago, Zhivago Partners. Thank you so much for being my guest today, and thanks for all the advice. You are a very inspiring person. So thanks for inspiring me, and I'm sure my audience as well.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Good questions.
Thank you. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. And a very special thanks to Kristin Zhivago for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. If you're an entrepreneur and would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest. Just remember that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Once again, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, both on Amazon, and as an audiobook available on Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.